Russia under President Vladimir Putin has demonstrated a sustained commitment in recent years to undermining faith in the Western democratic process. Around the 2017 French presidential election, Russian agents reportedly engaged in extensive social media trolling, cyber theft and targeted leaks of damaging information designed to undercut President Emmanuel Macron. The country's harassment in the months leading up to Sweden's September 2018 election became so grievous that the prime minister of the traditionally neutral country called out Moscow by name and castigated its behavior as completely unacceptable. And the results of the two-year Mueller investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election continue to reveal the extent to which a foreign country can snarl America's democratic processes. Israel, however, appears to have avoided any such assault. The elections that took place this week, while politically contentious and perhaps even scandalous, do not appear to have been maligned by foreign interference or endured serious attempts by an outside power to influence the outcome. Multiple sources familiar with the inner workings of the notoriously tight-lipped Israeli security services say no such review of the election outcome appears to be underway, at least publicly. One of those agencies, Shin Bet, made an unusual public statement earlier this year saying it could successfully thwart foreign attempts to shape the election. And none of the major players who lost to incumbent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has raised concerns about foreign interference in their grumblings about the final vote. This includes his primary opponent, Benny Gantz, who previously served as the military's top officer and would be expected to know through formal procedure or informal connections, perhaps more than others in a country with mandatory military service, whether he had any standing to challenge Netanyahu's victory based on some sort of foreign foul play. So why did Russia or any other actor with nefarious intentions appear to spare the Jewish state, which its partners routinely tout as the Middle East's principal democracy and a close partner of these Western alliances? Israel is outside of that. It's not the main battleground, so to speak, in this struggle, says James Lamond, a Russia specialist with the liberal-leaning Center for American Progress. It can be difficult to read the proverbial tea leaves into what Putin's ambitions are, though his tactics are wide-ranging. A task force stood up by the European Union identified last week 10 tools in Russia's election meddling toolkit, ranging from information manipulation to directly financing opposition movements to, in some cases, the use of hard military power, as in Georgia or Ukraine. Lamont and others don't believe Putin wishes to return Russia to the Soviet era when it controlled a series of satellite states. Rather, the former KGB officer appears more interested in developing personal networks of power that help him achieve his twin goals, undermining democracy as a model for the West and breaking transatlantic institutions. He seeks to rebuild Russia's international image on this model. Putin views Israel more along the lines of a player in Middle East politics, and he is trying to position himself as one of the few countries that can really speak to everybody in the region, to be a power broker. Lamont says. Russia likely knows that its interference in foreign elections, even in support of a particular candidate it believes will cooperate once assuming office, always runs the risk of undermining their subsequent tenure and becoming labeled as Moscow's stooge. Unlike in the U.S., Putin wants the elected leadership of Israel to be effective, so there's much less reason to engage in the type of active measures they engaged in the U.S. in 2016, says Jamal Jaffer, vice president at the private cybersecurity firm IronNet with extensive experience advising senior defense and intelligence officials. Russia would likely have maintained this standing even if Gantz had won. Despite his staunch political opposition to Netanyahu, he did not offer any foreign policies that would starkly contrast against the incumbent's tenure, particularly any that would have clashed with Russia or the U.S. Many experts believe his early administration would have focused principally on domestic issues like the economy. As the leader of a Western democracy with a renewed mandate to govern, Netanyahu has one of the best working relationships with the Russian leader while also maintaining strong ties with the U.S. and its allies. The Prime Minister, now entering his fifth term, visited both Washington and Moscow in the days before the election, securing their support but also showing his electorate that he maintains international backing for Israel and its policies. Broadly, Israel's foreign policies don't clash with Russia, except potentially for its immediate neighbor. In Syria, where Russia has an active presence in defending the regime of President Bashar al-Assad, Moscow has largely turned a blind eye as Israeli airstrikes have targeted Hezbollah and Iranian forces operating within the country, even to the outskirts of Damascus. Israel being effective doesn't really harm Russia the way it would with the U.S., except with regard to Syria, Jaffer says. But with Israel's activities in Syria, those were at least given the tacit nod by Russia, and we know that because there aren't Russian-made S-300s shooting down Israeli planes. The strategy appears to have already worked, as Russia continues to back the regime in Damascus and help broker influence among the other countries operating there, such as Turkey and Israel's archenemy Iran, without inflaming tensions with Jerusalem. Israel isn't the only example of a democracy in whose election Russia did not interfere in recent years. Officials in the Netherlands, for example, began a comprehensive campaign of drawing attention to the threats posed by Russian meddling in the lead-up to their March 2017 elections. The Netherlands serves as a key trading partner to Russia, and perhaps Moscow didn't wish risking that relationship, particularly since 200 Dutch nationals were aboard flight MH17 when Russian-backed rebels shot it down over Ukraine. It appears the election was spared. Likewise, Germany, another foreign partner that Russia values, did not record any serious interference in its September 2017 elections despite intense Russian activity there in prior years. Some attribute the absence of an attack to the less partisan nature of German politics, or to the fact that the Kremlin lost the element of surprise. However, any pause in Russian interference should not be confused with a shift in their policies, analysts say. Jaffer says Russia's ambitions in shaping Western elections remains general, sow dissension, and make governance less effective.